Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael. Welcome to the Gas and Gavel video channel. Today we are going to take a look at this 1991 Chevy C4 Corvette convertible. This 1991 Chevy C4 Corvette is powered by a 5.7 liter V8 motor, pushing out 245 horsepower and 345 foot-pounds of torque. All that power is sent to the rear wheels via a 4-speed automatic transmission. There is an option for a 6-speed manual transmission in this C4 Corvette convertible. But the tester that we're using today is equipped with the 4-speed automatic transmission. This 1991 Chevy C4 Corvette is finished in a Chevy bright red exterior with a matching red leather interior. The Corvette bright red paint is matched to a white convertible soft top. I do want to note that in 1991, the C4 Corvette convertible was offered with a factory OEM removable hardtop that you could place on top of the folding fabric roof. And the hardtop essentially looked like this. And basically mounted, you would put the soft top down and mount that OEM hardtop onto your convertible Corvette. That's a really nice factory option, especially for people who maybe live in colder climates and maybe need a little bit more insulation and covering during the winter months in their C4 Corvette convertible. And now in 2025, you can still find those factory OEM C4 convertible hardtops for sale on such websites as Bring a Trailer and eBay. The Chevy Corvette C4 is the 4th generation Chevy Corvette. It was first introduced in 1984 and ran until 1996. So one of the more interesting aspects of the exterior of the C4 Corvette is that the majority of the exterior door panels are actually constructed of fiberglass material. And this was done for two main reasons. The first main reason is number one, weight savings, and also number two, rust prevention, since fiberglass does not rust. So specifically the hood, the doors, the quarter panels, the inner fenders, the T-top, if this car had the T-top, are all constructed of fiberglass material, whereas the front and rear bumpers are composed of polyurethane plastic. The biggest downside to having the fiberglass body components is that if you're ever in an accident with your C4 Corvette, it actually costs a lot more, and it takes a lot more work to repair fiberglass, as opposed to if the door panels were made out of traditional steel or aluminum. So keep that in mind, and try not to get into accidents with your C4 Corvette. In 1991, the C4 Corvette received a significant mid-cycle update composed of updated front and rear bumpers, front and rear headlights and taillights, an improved suspension package, and several updated interior components. For example, in 1999, the mid-cycle update for the rear Corvette quad Corvette taillights. In previous years of the earlier generation C4 Corvette, the taillights were actually much more circular, a la these pictures here. Whereas if you see the updated 1991 Chevy Corvette taillights, they have a much more squared or rectangular design. Here's a nice side-by-side shot. Another example of the 1991 mid-cycle update of the C4 Corvette, composed of a revised front bumper with revised front turn signals and integrated fog lights. So the earlier generation of earlier years of the C4 Corvette, the bumpers had a much more squared off appearance of the headlights, a la the picture here. And the updated 1991 headlights have a much more modern, curved, one-piece fog lights and turn signals that are integrated into a single strip. But we'll get into deeper detail of the 1991 updates in the exterior and interior tour. We'll get into a much more in-depth look at those 1991 mid-cycle updates of the C4 Corvette during the interior and the exterior tour of this 1991 Chevy C4 Corvette. The original MSRP way back in 1991 for a brand new 1991 Chevy Corvette C4 convertible came out to an amount of $38,770 before options. The C4 Chevy Corvette came in two body styles. The first was a targa top coupe, and the second is what we see here, which is a full soft top convertible Corvette. Let's take a look at the motor of this 1991 Chevy Corvette convertible. And in order to open that fiberglass clamshell front hood, there is a small latch located here besides the brake and accelerator pedal. You just give it a good pull and the clamshell hood will pop right open. And you essentially want to lift the clamshell hood from the center hood line. It is pretty heavy, so you're gonna probably need two hands, but a single person can do it. And essentially here is the clamshell hood fully open, and here's the engine of your 1991 Chevy Corvette convertible. Here is your 5.7 liter V8 motor. This 5.7 liter V8 motor pushes out 245 horsepower and 345 foot-pounds of torque. All that power is routed to a 4-speed automatic transmission, and all that power is sent to the rear wheels. The V8 motor in this 1991 Chevy Corvette does a 0-60 time of 5.6 seconds in the convertible, and a slightly faster 0-60 time of 5.3 seconds in the coupe. This V8 motor has a top speed of 147 miles per hour in the 4-speed automatic transmission trim. The V8 motor in this 1991 Chevy Corvette has a 0-60 time of 6.3 seconds. The V8 motor gets a combined gas mileage of 19.2 combined city highway. Let's take a look at the engine bay from an enthusiast perspective. So this is probably one of the most exotic features of this 91 Chevy Corvette, which is this clamshell hood that lifts completely forward And hidden behind the clamshell are your pop-up headlights when they are closed and hidden away. There's a definite exotic car look to the engine bay, especially when you lift the clamshell and you can see basically the top of the tires, the entire front suspension. Something that you don't really see in Corvettes, especially nowadays with the mid-engine Corvette. Here you can see very closely the rare factory optioned Bilstein adaptable suspension. You can see the characteristic yellow Bilstein dampers, and if you look very closely at the bottom, you do see the Bilstein logo on those again, rare factory option adaptable suspension. Another very enthusiast type feature of this V8 motor is that right in front you do have this huge ram air intake, sucking air right from the front of your Corvette, essentially straight into that V8 motor. And mounted from my viewpoint, essentially it looks like a kind of front mid-engine setup. The engine set all the way back against that firewall to help improve that 50-50 weight distribution. It looks definitely very aggressive. And another great feature of having the clamshell hood is that if you're working on your Corvette, it's definitely easy to access essentially your entire front end, from the suspension to any related electronic component, or if you need to top up any fluids or replace any parts. It definitely makes the car very accessible. And again, this is a very the most impressive feature of this 91 Chevy Corvette. I like how the hood does have integrated, it looks like lights integrated into the clamshell, so if you're working on your V8 motor at night, you're able to see without a shop light. Very, very nice. The top intake manifold has this nice silver trim finish. There is a tuned port injection stamped in the center, and you can see essentially the 4 cylinders of the V8 on the driver's side, and then the other 4 cylinders on the passenger side. And this is the motor that is in your 1991 Chevy Corvette convertible. Let's begin the exterior tour of this 1991 Chevy Corvette C4 convertible. And we'll start with the front end. Since this is a 1991 Chevy Corvette C4 example, this does have the mid-cycle update that happened to the C4 in 1991, and part of the mid-cycle update was an updated, redesigned front bumper. And the front bumper essentially incorporated a set of front fog lights and turn signals in a single light strip on the left and right sides of the C4 front bumper. So as you can see, here are your integrated fog lights right up front. Integrated into the fog light strip is your turn signal. And the whole thing is integrated into a single light strip, giving the C4 Corvette for the 91 and up model year a much more modern and sleek appearance. So you have your front fog lights here. You have an amber and clear turn signal. And all that is integrated into a single light strip. Underneath your bumper, you do have a bottom front spoiler. Very, very subtle, painted flat black. Definitely probably provides downforce for that front end of the C4 Corvette. In the center of the mid-cycle updated C4 Corvette front bumper, you do have a front license plate cover, and in this case, this front license plate cover is very Corvette specific. And above the front bumper of the C4 Corvette are the very period correct mid 80s, early 90s pop-up halogen headlights. And we'll go ahead and play a clip of for you of these pop-up halogen headlights, well, popping up. The front hood is actually a giant clamshell fiberglass piece that essentially starts midway at the fender, and essentially you'll see during the engine review that the front end of this fiberglass hood essentially opens like a clamshell this way up, revealing that V8 motor. Again, several body components of the C4 Corvette are composed of fiberglass, and one of the main fiberglass components is this front clamshell hood. The front clamshell hood does feature these dual hood bumps, giving the clamshell hood a very muscular and aggressive appearance, and hints at that V8 motor hidden beneath that front clamshell, painted a Corvette race red. And to finish off that clamshell hood, you do have the classic Chevy Corvette emblem with the black and white checkered flag and the Chevy logo on the other flag. Another design element from the 1991 C4 Corvette mid-cycle update takes place in the front lower fenders. So the front lower fenders of this 1991 C4 Corvette has these, looks to me, functional 4 fender strakes with 4 individual openings. So in the previous earlier years of the pre-91 mid-cycle update fenders, the fender streaks are actually 2 streaks with 2 larger openings. So this is the updated mid-cycle update front lower fenders of your C4 Corvette. Functional and fashionable. Another 91 mid-cycle update on the side profile of your 1991 C4 Corvette were these essentially body colored side moldings integrated into the front fender and running the length of the Corvette's doors. In the earlier generation or earlier year C4s, the side molding was painted a contrasting flat black. I like how the mid-cycle update painted those moldings, giving the side profile a much cleaner, uniform look. The 1991 mid-cycle update of the C4 also brought a new wheel and tire package, seen here in this example that we're test driving here today. These 17-inch alloy wheels in the mid-cycle updated Chevy C4 Corvette were given a nickname, the saw blade wheels, which again, from the external feature, the center essentially does look like a saw blade. In the center, you do have your integrated Chevy Corvette emblem. You have 5 chrome lugs, and the front 17-inch wheels are wrapped in a 255/45 ZR 17-inch wheels. The wheels are staggered. We're going to go circle around to the rear and see how much wider the rear 17-inch saw blades are. Now cycling to the rear 17-inch C4 Corvette wheel and tire package. The rear tires are slightly wider, 255/45 ZR 17s with the matching alloy wheels. You can definitely tell the rear wheel is much wider than the front. You definitely have a very prominent lip on the rim of the rear 17-inch saw blades compared to the fronts. And that is the updated wheel and tire package of the 1991 Chevy Corvette C4 mid-cycle updated wheel and tire package. This particular example of this C4 Corvette comes with a white vinyl convertible top. The C4 Corvette's convertible top is manually operated, meaning you gotta use your 2 hands in order to put this top down. But it is a nice white vinyl fabric. With a essentially a plastic rear window. Again, no glass here. That's straight plastic. Nonetheless, the white vinyl soft top contrasts really well with this Corvette red paint. And we'll go ahead and play a video of how to put down this convertible soft top of your C4 Corvette. Let's take a look at the rear bumper of your 1991 Chevy Corvette C4 convertible. This 1991 C4 Corvette convertible taillights feature the mid-cycle updated 1991 rear quad taillights. So in the earlier year models of the C4 Corvette, before the 91 update, the taillights were actually very circular. Whereas if you see in the mid-cycle updates of the 91 and up C4 Corvettes, Chevy changed the taillights to more rectangular as opposed to circular taillight. Very subtle design difference. And I believe that the more rectangular quad taillights were lifted from the C4's ZR1 taillights. I'm sure that upset a lot of the C4 ZR1 owners. The rear bumper also features an integrated third brake light bar. And instead of an emblem, you get an embossed Corvette lettering across the rear bumper. And above the third brake light, you do have a additional Corvette emblem integrated into essentially the center of the rear trunk of your convertible that hides a special surprise underneath it. And what is that surprise? Well, essentially the emblem is hiding a little kind of notch here, and you lift your finger in there, and your gas cap to fill in your 91 premium octane gas into your Corvette is located in the trunk area. I assume Chevy did that to basically clean up the side so you don't have for example, a gas cap popping out of the side of the rear fender. Very symmetrical. And I'm pretty sure the gas tank is also located in the trunk anyways. So again, a very clean way to hide the gas cap on your C4 Corvette. When you do fold down that soft fabric top, it gets stowed away behind this body color to new cover that helps protect that soft top from elements when you do have the top down. So essentially in 1991, Chevy decided to do a mid-cycle update on the base Corvette's rear bumper. And they essentially just took the C4 Corvette's ZR1's rear end from the rear bumper to the rear taillights, and basically slapped it on the base model Corvettes and called it a day. So essentially the 91 and up Chevy Corvettes rear end is essentially pulled straight from the C4 ZR1. The only thing that's missing is the ZR1 badge. And at the bottom of the 91 mid-cycle updated bumper, you do have these quad tip oval cut exhaust integrated into the lower rear bumper. Very clean design. I love how the quad tips essentially match the quad circular taillights. Very nice design feature, and one of the cleanest rear ends on any Chevy Corvette. And we'll go ahead and play an exhaust clip for you now. And hidden behind the saw blade wheels are 38mm dual piston front brake calipers. You can kind of see a little bit of it through that opening there. And that 2-piston brake caliper is mounted to an aluminum 13-inch front brake rotor. And hidden behind the saw blade wheels and those dual brake calipers is the a very special suspension option. This particular C4 Corvette is equipped with the optional Bilstein FX3 selective ride control adaptive suspension. And the adaptive suspension essentially gave your C4 Corvette 3 different driving modes that allowed you to essentially adjust the dampening and stiffness of your C4 Corvette suspension straight from a knob that's attached to the dash of your C4 Corvette. And we'll get a better look at that when we do the interior tour of the C4 Corvette. Your C4 Corvette featured these body colored, very sleekly designed aerodynamic side mirrors. They are powered and heated. And match very well with the sleek design of the rest of your C4 Corvette. The rear trunk also integrates a very period correct 1980s powered steel antenna, so you can catch all your 80s tunes in your C4 Corvette. At the center of the rear bumper, Chevy has integrated the reverse lights into essentially the license plate holder. On the left hand, right hand sides of your license plate are your Chevy Corvette's reverse light. Let's begin the interior tour of this 1991 Chevy Corvette convertible, and we'll start with the driver's side door panel. And here it is. The interior of this 1991 Chevy Corvette is finished in a red leather interior that matches, again, that Corvette red exterior. The door panel, The entire driver's side door panel is trimmed in that red leather up top. Even the metal door handle is sprayed a nice red finish to match that red leather. The armrest is wrapped in a contrasting black leather finish. Underneath the door handle is your lock and unlock buttons. And in 1991, you did have power windows in this car, and up top you do have your power mirror controls for your side mirrors. One really unique feature that I like about the door panel of the Chevy Corvette is at the bottom of the door panel, it's trimmed in this matching red carpet. Essentially matching the interior carpeting of your red interior Corvette, as seen here. The accelerator and brake pedal has a nice rubber finish with the Corvette logo stamped onto the brake pedal. And here are the seats found in the 1991 Chevy Corvette convertible. So the 1991 Chevy Corvette had 3 different types of seat options. There was a standard cloth seat option, an optional leather seat option, and this third choice, the top of the line sport seats option, wrapped in genuine red leather. The sports seats essentially featured a much more contoured, aggressive bolstering, and they were also powered for both the driver and passenger side with electronic assist for lumbar support. You can definitely tell these are sports seats, definitely designed after race bucket seats. Very aggressive side bolstering in the lumbar area and also in the thigh area. It's essentially a race bucket seat in the center, wrapped in that really nice red leather. And there is a Corvette. So the 1991 Chevy Corvette had 3 different types of seat options. They had a factory cloth seat option, a factory leather seat option, and the top of the line, what you see here, the sport seat option, wrapped in red leather. The sport seat option featured these very aggressive, essentially racing bucket leather wrap seats that are powered, reclinable. You can definitely see the aggressive side bolstering in the lumbar area, and also the deep thigh support to keep you nice and snug in your Chevy Corvette. The sport seats are trimmed in that red soft touch leather, and in the center headrest there is a subtle Corvette logo essentially stitched into that red leather. Again, this seat is powered using a button that is mounted in the center console. So you can essentially adjust the power options of the seat using the center console button for the driver and for the passenger. The only manual function on the seat is if you want to recline the seat back. You need to essentially reach for a tiny little knob located right at the footwell here. You click that knob and then you're able to lower the backrest. It took me forever to figure that one out when I initially got into this Corvette. But again, everything else is powered except for the reclining the back of the sport seats. They definitely look nice and they definitely feel great. Now let's take a look at what it's like sitting in the cockpit of your 1991 Chevy Corvette. And here we are. So the first thing you notice when you're sitting in the 91 Corvette is essentially so one of the first things I noticed about sitting in the cockpit of the 1991 Chevy Corvette was how similar it is to the most modern day mid-engine Chevy Corvette. So as you recall, an earlier video review on the Gas and Gavel YouTube channel, I did review a C8 base mid-engine Corvette. I believe it was a 2024 model. And if you recall the interior review of that video, I'll leave a link below to that video below. It definitely had that driver-centric center area where essentially all the buttons was buttons of the center console and the steering wheel area essentially pivoted towards the driver, whereas the passenger is left to basically stare at a either a front airbag or a front dash area. So again, if you recall in the newest C8 Corvette, this would be where the tower of buttons would be. This 91 Corvette does not have it, but again, definitely has very similar design aspects to the newest Corvette almost 30 years later. The 1991 Chevy Corvette features this 4-spoke, leather-wrapped steering wheel. It has a nice black cross-stitch on the inside. In the center, you do have a Corvette wording stamped into the center airbag. And to the left of the Corvette, you do have essentially 2 buttons to access the horn of this car. Again, very quintessential 80s type steering wheel. Very big, very large, but also very comfortable. Behind the steering wheel features one of the 1991 C4 Corvette mid-cycle updates for the interior. And that update was basically an update of the center instrument cluster. So the update, you still have an analog instrument cluster, but essentially it was basically cleaned up and modernized. If you see the earlier C4 Corvette's instrument cluster, it's essentially a hodgepodge of a bunch of like different gauges and numbers and tachometers and speedometers all thrown into one. It was very confusing to look at. Here they basically just cleaned it up. On the left hand side you have an RPM meter. On the right hand side you have all your engine electronic vitals that you need to know, such as your engine temperature, oil temperature, your battery voltage. And then in the center you just have a very simple LCD screen that displays your speed. To the left of the steering wheel, you have your headlight controls to basically pop up and pop down those, again, retractable headlights of your C4 Corvette. Behind your steering wheel, you have a single control stalk that basically controls multi-functions. It helps control your cruise control, it controls your front wiper blades, and it controls your windshield wiper fluid, and also functions as your turn signal stalk. To the right of the steering wheel, you have a variety of buttons that allow you to access a variety of information, such as your trip odometer, the amount of range you have left in your fuel tank, and you can essentially set your trip mileage. Very, very quintessential 1980s analog buttons to access that information. Underneath that, you have your climate control buttons that allow you to set your interior heat and AC cooling. Very easy to understand and very solid buttons. Something I do miss in modern cars nowadays are these solid analog buttons. Underneath the climate control buttons, the owner of the C4 Corvette has elected to update the stereo system to a more modern Pioneer head unit. And this more modern single DIN head unit allows for an additional small storage compartment to store your phone or your wallet. And down here in the center console is your 4-speed automatic transmission. The 4-speed automatic transmission shift knob is leather wrapped in a nice black leather boot. And off to the side, you do have that classic 1980s transmission label with the PRND21. And to note, the alternative transmission in the 1991 Chevy Corvette is a 6-speed manual transmission, but the tester that we're testing today comes equipped with a 4-speed automatic transmission. Next to the shift knob, you do have your cup holders. As you can see, drinks in the 1980s were definitely a lot smaller than drinks today. The cup holder is actually very laughably shallow and laughably small. Above that, you do have a cigarette outlet that can probably double up as a cigarette charging port. And below the automatic shift knob, right next to the driver and passenger side seat powered controls, is one of the most rarest sought after options in the 1991 Chevy Corvette convertible or even coupe. So for the 1991 model year, Chevy offered an optional and located directly beneath the automatic shift knob lever is your driver and passenger side buttons to control the powered functions of the front passenger and driver seat. Your driver has a set and your passenger has a set. And located between the power seat buttons is one of the most rarest and important and also the most enjoyable button in the entire interior of this 1991 C4 Chevy Corvette. This Chevy Corvette comes with the very rare factory optional Bilstein FX3 selective ride control adaptive sport suspension. The FX3 selective ride control factory option in the 1991 Chevy Corvette essentially gives you a range of comfort and cornering capabilities, from a softer than regular Corvette suspension to a much firmer than even this Z51 suspension in the Chevy Corvette. The system is essentially operated by what you see here on this knob, and essentially gives you 3 different driving modes for the Bilstein shocks. And the 3 driving modes are, and the driving modes here on this knob has worn down, but essentially the 3 driving modes are, to the left is touring, the middle is sport, and the right is performance, with 6 different automatic graduations within each mode, depending on the speed of the car and the console setting. So touring is essentially the comfort option with the softest settings. The middle setting, sport, is in between the most aggressive and the softest setting. And then my favorite setting is the performance option, which is essentially the most aggressive settings that essentially stiffen up the Bilstein dampers to its absolute dampening capacity, and again provides more dampening and more stiffness in the suspension than in the Z51 suspension package for the Chevy Corvette. This rare factory option is also great to have because essentially if you do, let's say, drive around the city of Los Angeles and you run into a more rougher set of roads with a bunch of potholes, you can go ahead and set it back in comfort mode and drive right through that in comfort. And then when you're feeling spirited or need a more aggressively tuned suspension, say you're gonna go for a racetrack weekend, or you wanna go for a spirited ride in the canyons, you can go ahead and put it on the most aggressive setting, the performance mode, and again, the suspension becomes a race suspension. So again, it's multi-wide adaptable, and again, this is a very rare factory option of these Bilstein selective ride control, shock absorber, and suspension. The Selective Ride Core shock from Bilstein is an electronically operated ride adaptive shock absorber. Along with the dampeners, the onboard computer is able to control them from this, again, center console selector. And a wiring harness links all the hardware together. So a real quick history regarding the Bilstein option in the Chevy Corvette. Essentially in the 1980s, Bilstein designed this system with a research and development cost of $230,000, which is a lot of money today in 2025 dollars, and basically adapted it to the limited run Porsche 959. Fast forward to the mid 1980s, essentially one of the engineers of the Chevy Corvette essentially linked up with Bilstein and negotiated a deal where essentially Bilstein would offer the same suspension and adapted it to the 1984 to 1991 Chevy Corvette and would offer it as, again, a factory option. So essentially in your 1991 Chevy Corvette, if you do option for this Bilstein adaptable suspension, you are essentially getting a suspension that is in one of the most rarest Porsches in existence, the Porsche 959. The climate control outlets for the driver's side are integrated into, again, that driver-centric dash area up top. The driver has 2 vents, while the passenger has its own essentially 3-row climate control outlets, but they get 0 buttons to press. On top of the passenger side's climate control outlets, you do have a top mount lockable glove compartment. Up top, the interior of your Chevy Corvette soft top, although it's a manual top, it is lined with an additional layer of black fabric, and I assume that's for insulation purposes. Up top, you do have driver and passenger side window visors. And a nice classic 1980s rearview mirror. And behind the driver and passenger side seat, when the top is up, you do have this kind of essentially storage shelf on the inside. It goes pretty deep all the way on the inside. I'm able to put essentially a side bag and a large backpack back here for storage. But when you do put that top down, you do lose this rear deck space. But with the top up, it's nice to have a nice little storage shelf, so you don't have to leave all your belongings in the front passenger seat. Let's take a look at the key that you get when you purchase your 1991 Chevy Corvette convertible. And here it is. It is one of the most simple analog keys in existence. It is simply a rubber key with an integrated immobilizer integrated into the key. And at the top of the analog key, the only sign that you have any sort of Corvette from 1991 is essentially the top portion of your key does have the GM. And on the opposite end of that analog key, the only way that you can tell that you actually have a Chevy Corvette from 1991 is essentially the top portion of the key has the General Motors logo embezzled essentially into the top portion of the analog key. Things were definitely much more simple in the 90s and the late 80s, and the 1991 Chevy Corvette key is a perfect example of that. And here's the key that you get when you purchase your 1991 Chevy Corvette C4 convertible. Okay, let's begin the test drive of this 1991 Chevy Corvette C4 convertible. This C4 convertible is equipped with the 4-speed automatic transmission, and as a refresher, this base C4 Corvette is powered by a 5.7 liter V8 motor, pushing out 245 horsepower and 345 foot-pounds of torque. This naturally aspirated V8 sends all that power to the rear wheels via a 4-speed automatic transmission or a 6-speed manual transmission. So the first thing I noticed when I jumped into this 1991 C4 Corvette here in 2025 was the interior definitely gave a lot of basically one of my favorite 1980s shows, definitely Knight Rider vibes, especially with the digital or the analog gauges and just like this very jet fighter like setup of the C4 driver's area. It really does definitely take you back. So in order to start the car, you essentially have this analog key that you must stick into an actual ignition. No push to start here in 1991. And let's start it up. And let's see what this 1991 Chevy Corvette C4 convertible what the 4-speed automatic transmission drives like. So for this point of view drive in this Corvette, I'm going to start with the what I love most about this Chevy Corvette, and then end with what I dislike the most about the Chevy Corvette. So starting with the absolute crown jewel of the 1991 Chevy Corvette that I am testing driving right now is essentially the suspension. So the suspension on this car, or this car, is equipped with a very rare, factory, optional, Bilstein, adaptable, variable sport suspension. As a reminder, the sport suspension, long story short, Bilstein developed a adaptable sport suspension back in the mid-1980s for the Porsche 959. Shortly thereafter, in the mid-1980s, a Corvette engineer sweet-talked a Bilstein company to partner up, and they essentially adapted that Porsche 959 Bilstein adaptable suspension and made it a factory option in the 1984 to 1991 Chevy Corvette, and this car is equipped with it. So when your car is equipped with this very rare factory option, you do have a knob in the center console that allows you to basically change to 3 different dampening or driving modes for the Bilstein suspension. There's a comfort mode called Touring, a middle of the ground driving experience, so essentially Bilstein engineers took that Porsche 959 adaptable suspension and threw it into the as a factory option for the 84 to 91 model years of the Chevy Corvette. Again, it's a very rare factory option, and I was very surprised to find that this car had it. And I'm glad it did. So the suspension, when you put it in the most aggressive drive mode, which is, I believe, performance, which is essentially race mode, and essentially it stiffens the Bilstein adaptable dampers to the most stiff setting. And I can tell you right now that when it is in that setting, the car drives like it's on rails. There's 0 body lean. It eats up the curves like a car, half its size, half its weight. When you accelerate and when you brake, there is no squatting of the front or rear ends. I mean, it essentially drives like, again, a Porsche 959 in a American Corvette body. I rate the suspension in this car a 9.5 out of 10. So the suspension was my favorite part of this car. Now I'm gonna work my way down. Let's talk acceleration. So I'm gonna describe this car's acceleration essentially as, this car is powerful, but it is not fast. So the V8 motor pushes out 245 horsepower and 345 foot-pounds of torque. That 345 foot-pounds of torque is available at a pretty low 2,500 RPM. So again, this car is very torquey. Just stepping on the gas right now from a standstill, you do definitely get yourself pushed back in the seat. So you have the power there. But what this car is lacking is speed. It has a lot of power, but it takes a long time for the car to get to 60 miles per hour. I believe the 0 to 60 time in this car is around 6.5 seconds. And in this example that I'm driving in 2025, it seems a lot longer. The car just feels really, really heavy, feels really, really big. Again, I describe the acceleration of this car as, this car is powerful, but it is not fast. I rate the acceleration in this car a 6 out of 10. And I believe it is the most underpowered of all Corvette generations. Which is unfortunate. Let's talk braking. The brakes on this car is actually pretty decent. The car has a 2-piston brakes up front that clamp down on, I believe, 13-inch ventilated rotors in the front. And the braking is actually pretty solid on this car. It's not too hard, it's not too soft. It has a very confident feel. No sponginess. The pedal feels very responsive. And it definitely helps stop this very heavy Corvette, especially in convertible form. I rate the brakes a solid 7.5 out of 10. Let's talk engine, let's talk noise, let's talk sound. So exhaust sounds. This car definitely, just from the moment that you start it up, it definitely has a quintessential classic muscle car V8 rumble and growl. And if you know me and my previous car reviews, I definitely love exhaust noises. I love aggressive sounding exhaust noises. But this is the first time in a car review, out of the almost 50 reviews that I've done so far, that I found that the exhaust noise or the engine noise of this car is actually a little too loud. So even at idle and acceleration, I can't tell what's more loud, whether it's the exhaust, the quad tip exhaust from the rear, or the V8 motor in the front. No matter whether you're at a standstill at a stoplight or you're accelerating, the car is just very loud. It never gets quiet. And then to add to the sound issue of this car, especially with the convertible, there's just all these like essentially openings to the outside world, and the interior is just very loud. You have the loud V8 exhaust, you have the loud rumble of the V8, and then you have all these little interior holes that allow exterior road noise to the interior. So again, this car is just very loud. And although I'm sure that if you are a muscle car enthusiast, you would probably say that this has a great V8 rumble. To me, in my personal opinion, this the V8 rumble in this car, to me sounds more like there's an issue with the motor or a problem with the car. So again, I'm not sure it's because this is one of my first more like classic muscle cars. But again, like I said, it's I'm not really a fan of the exhaust noise or engine noise in this car. Everything's just way too loud. I rate the sound of this car a 5 out of 10. From the exhaust to the cabin to the engine noise. Let's talk steering. So the steering on this car, although I'm sure it has power steering, I can tell you right now that before you pick up or drive a C4 Corvette, definitely you want to do some arm exercises and stretch your arms out, because to turn in this car, whether you're making a U-turn, left turn, or right turn, the steering wheel is very underpowered, or essentially I'm not even sure if the steering wheel is powered. You essentially have to put a lot of muscle arm strength, especially in your forearms, to turn this Corvette. The steering is very heavy, actually too heavy. And again, it just makes driving and steering the C4 Chevy Corvette a very burdensome task to do. I mean, fortunately, I've been working on my arms, so again, it's manageable, but I imagine it will get tiring after a while. I wish that Corvette would have added just a little bit more power to the car. I mean, usually most cars nowadays in 2025, the biggest complaint is that the steering wheel is too overpowered, the steering wheel feels too light. This car is the complete exact polar opposite of that. It has a very heavy steering that requires a lot of muscle work from the driver. The only positive thing I can say about the steering is that it is very direct. Once you put in the work and you point the car where it goes, the steering is actually very direct. I rate the steering on this car a 5 out of 10. Rearward visibility, obviously with the top down in this car, you have great rearward visibility. But when you do have the top up, essentially, you have okay rear visibility. My biggest complaint about the rear view is that with the soft top Chevy convertible, the rear windshield screen is actually not even glass. It's essentially a piece of just like a thick vinyl plastic. And after all these years of sitting in the sun, again, this is a 91 model, I'm test driving in 2025, the plastic has gotten very, very cloudy. So it's a little hard to see, essentially, outside the rear view of the convertible soft top. I rate the rearward visibility. I mean, I assume if I replace that, if the owner replaced that vinyl rear window, it'll definitely improve it. But again, I'm pretty sure it's a common issue in these older C4 Corvettes, especially in 2025. So to sum up the C4 Corvette, I mean, if you see my previous reviews, I've driven the C5, C6, C7, C8, and I was initially very excited to test drive this C4 Corvette, but after my day spent driving the C4 Corvette, I've come to the conclusion that the C4 Corvette is for a particular type of enthusiast. You gotta be either a really, really big Corvette fan, a really, really big muscle car fan, or a really big I guess like a classic car fan. For myself, I respect the C4. Did I enjoy it? I'll probably say no. It didn't live up to my expectations from acceleration to just the heavy steering. And again, it's just made for, again, I feel like the C4 Corvette is made more for just like the pure, like Corvette purist to enjoy. I recommend that if you were choosing between the C4, C5, C6 Corvette, get the C5 or C6 Corvette. I think you just get better driving experiences with those cars, and again, you don't have to deal with the mid-80s type of car problems that the C4 has. And my final, I don't want to say complaint about the C4 Corvette is that if you do want a C4 Corvette, please be aware that the interior, first off, it's very, very hard to get into. There's a very high, essentially, door sill that you essentially have to climb over. And then once you get in, the interior compartment is actually very, very cramped. From the sport seats to the even the accelerator and brake area, essentially it feels like it tunnels down like a triangle. So essentially there is no legroom even in the acceleration and brake area. And it doesn't help that this with all the buttons and the driver's side all pointing towards you, it just feels very claustrophobic. So again, the interior is pretty small and cramped. And for me, I enjoy cozy spaces, but even for me, I'm 5'7", 5'8", normal weight. The C4 Corvette, its interior is actually very, very small and cramped. So be aware of that. So for the remaining few minutes of this video, I'm just gonna go ahead and just cruise around, and then for the second part of the drive video, I'm just gonna do an ASMR style top-down cruise around this beach area. So enjoy the rumble of the V8. I'm gonna go ahead and put the windows down so you can really hear the full breath of that V8 rumble. The absolute pro of this 1991 Chevy Corvette convertible C4 is absolutely, if you are able to source one that optioned the Bilstein adaptive sport suspension. The C4 Corvette with that suspension in the most aggressive drive mode, the car rides like it's on rails. It drives like handles like a car half its size and half its weight. There's zero body lean. And the beauty of the adaptive suspension also is, if for example you live in Los Angeles and you carry a rough road full of potholes, you can essentially change the setting back into comfort mode and the dampeners soften up, allowing you a comfortable soft ride. But if you get the inkling to hit the racetrack on the weekends or take some canyons in your after work hours, you can essentially change the dampeners to the stiffest setting, and back and forth and vice versa. So again, very versatile suspension. It's soft when it needs to be, but it can be aggressive and firm when it needs to be. So again, biggest pro is the C4 Chevy Corvette equipped with that very rare factory Bilstein Sport adaptive variable suspension that again was adapted from the Porsche 959. The cons of the 1991 Chevy Corvette C4 generation, I pretty much went over in the driving video portion, and I'm gonna go over it again. Essentially, this car is, the best thing about this car is the rare Bilstein adaptive sport suspension. Handling, 10 out of 10. And the cons of the car is pretty much everything else about the C4 Corvette. The interior is small, tight, and cramped. It is very, very difficult to get into and out of. I'm not really sure where the stereotype of a 60-year-old American male who's overweight and drinks a lot of beer has a C4 Corvette, because I'm not even sure how he's getting in and out of it. Essentially, you have this really high door sill that essentially you have to hop over, and the sport bucket seats are actually very, very low. So again, even for myself, I consider myself pretty nimble, but again, it's a lot of work to get in and out of the interior, and once you're in it, the interior is just very, very cramped. I'm 5'7", 5'8", average height, average weight, and I love cozy places, but I can tell you right now that this interior is very small, and I think that's made for Americans' weight in the 1980s, because people have definitely gotten a lot bigger. Interior, tight, cramped, big con. The car is powerful, but it is slow. It has a lot of torque, but it gets to 0 to 60 in a very, very long time. Acceleration, the car feels very, very heavy. Handling, the steering, essentially you have no power steering in this car. It takes a lot of arm muscles in order to even turn, do left and right turns, let alone U-turn. So again, con there. And again, like I said, the C4 Corvette generation is essentially reserved, I feel, for just like the really, really Corvette purists, or you must really love the 1980s, because again, outside of the suspension, everything about the C4 is one big con. I hope everyone enjoyed this review of this 1991 Chevy Corvette C4 convertible. If you guys enjoyed this review, please like and subscribe to the Gas and Gavel YouTube channel. We truly do appreciate your support, and tune in next week for more exotic, enthusiast, performance, and possibly American muscle car reviews.